What's good, Raider Nation? Jesse Merrick here, coming in from the field at Allegiant Stadium for the first time since week one. We're breaking down a Raiders win. And look, I know it's against the Titans, and I know it wasn't pretty, but what's the saying at the end of the day? Just win, baby, and they did just that. So you'll just take them how they come along. That's really how you got to break this one down, guys. Obviously, this one today has to begin and end with talking about the defense. Those guys balled out. Also, we got to touch on the offense. They were efficient. Didn't try to push the ball down the field too much. And I think that's good. There's nothing wrong with that. We'll dive into that as well. But like I said, we have to start this whole breakdown with the defense. They were lights out. They had 6 sacks, 8 quarterback hits, 7 tackles for a loss, had 22 pressures, 13 quarterback hurries. They allowed the Titans to only go 3 for 13 on third downs and allowed only 65 rushing yards on the day. Talk about a day on defense. Obviously, again, I know this Titans offense isn't a world beater by any means, but again, you can't control who you play. You have to like what you saw from the defense overall today. I was really impressed with third down from them. Again, 3 for 13. This is after the Colts went 8 for 10, converting on 80% on third downs in the previous game. So massive turnaround for them. I asked Devin White after the game what the big difference was for them on third down, and he said that they really mixed up the looks. They brought pressures from different angles and just made Cam Ward think a lot, got him off of his spot. You go back to that game against the Cardinals when they had that wild comeback, Cam Ward was kept clean by his offensive line. He had time to move around and diagnose what the defense was doing. They did not give him time to do that today, and that was a massive factor in this game. They constantly accelerated his reads, pushed him off of his spot, obviously had him on his butt a lot. Like I said, six sacks, a lot of guys really getting involved. And when you hit a quarterback 8 times, I don't care who the heck you are, that's going to affect you. Again, 22 pressures. That's massive for this team. Max was involved. And again, each and every guy, took their turn kind of showing up. Tyree Wilson looked really good. It starts again with stopping the run. I thought those first couple drives, you could really see them stacking the line and just trying to stop the run and forcing Cam Ward, the rookie, to beat them, which, again, he was unable to do. Obviously, we talked about it heading into this game that slowing down Calvin Ridley was going to be a big factor in this game. He has the one catch for, I believe, 18 yards. But overall, not a horrible day. He does get hurt, so he leaves early. So that's a big boost for this defense. You don't root for anybody to get hurt, but you take it as it comes. I thought the defense did pretty well in pass coverage. Obviously, as the game wore on and they started throwing it more, yeah, they start picking up some more yardage. But overall, you can't be too mad about what the defense showed you coverage-wise. I know that soft zone is something that really bothers fans and stuff, and I get it, guys. But overall, you got to be happy with each side of them. On the day, Cam Ward goes 26 of 38 for 222 yards, 1 touchdown, has the 1 interception and the 2 fumbles as well. But like I said, third downs were massive for the Raiders in this one today. One of the guys in particular that really balled out, Devin White. You got to give him a game ball in this one today. He has 9 tackles, 1 sack, a forced fumble, and the interception as well on that, forced fumble there on the goal line that gave the Raiders the ball back at, I believe, the 2 double A-gap blitz. He comes free, plants them, and the Raiders are there to pick up the ball. Obviously, that was huge. You give the offense short fieldage like that, or short yardage like that near the red zone, and you have to capitalize. I know they made it a little harder on themselves than they should have, but at the end of the day, they get into the end zone. Massive to spot your offense field position like that and for them to be able to capitalize off of it. So, again, really impressed with what I saw from the defense as a whole, really. But Devin White gets the game ball on that side of the ball. That guy was everywhere. You go back and watch the tape, you're going to be really impressed with what you saw with him. And like I said, again, doing it live too. But comes down with the pick after it was tipped as well. Kind of almost like catching a punt for him. He was feeling himself after the game, and rightfully so. And I think, again, good on Patrick Graham to mix up those looks and make Cam Ward think and accelerate those reads, give the rookie a lot to have to kind of work through at there, and that's going to be a total game changer for you. So solid job by them overall. I know we talked about Caillou Blue-Kelly, the fact that he had given up the most yardage in coverage, at least according to Pro Football Focus, leading into this game. Well, he has a solid game overall. Again, gives up the 18-yarder to Calvin Ridley before he did go out of the game. And I know there was one later in the game. I think that was Eric Stokes, though, that gave it up. So overall, impressed with what Caillou Blue-Kelly was able to show. There was a few times, where he was able to wall guys off on the sideline. I know you guys want to see him in the slot more, and I think that's a conversation we can have. We'll maybe get into that later in the podcast or later in the week as things go on, because Darian Porter has played well. But the one thing I do need to always give a shout out to Caillou for is he's a willing tackler on the edge, was again in this game as well. So that's something you like to see out of a guy in him. And let me just pull up the box score now as I'm kind of starting to break things down here and just look at some more of the stats from the defense as we do talk about this. You know, Jeremy Chin, yeah, that's another guy. He was flying around hitting people all the time. I do talk about Caillou Blue Kelly. You never like to see your corners really involved heavily in the tackling game, but he does have 5 tackles. Eric Stotts has 5 tackles as well, so solid tackling from them overall. I thought they did a really good job. And Max Crosby, again, goes for 3 tackles, 2 sacks, 2 tackles for a loss, and 3 quarterback hits. As always, Max making his presence felt. Again, all around big-time game for the defense. Let's talk about the offense because there is a lot that I want to talk about with that group. Obviously, 20 points, not world-beater numbers, but I like the way that they came out in this game. It was very clear that their game plan was to come out, run the ball, and take that underneath stuff. At least that's what they did as the game wore on because they saw what the defense was doing. Geno said it afterwards. Sometimes it's about efficiency. That's what they had to do. I know there's a pick, and we'll talk about that. But overall, offensively, it was a solid, conservative game plan, and Geno managed the game. Pete used that word afterwards. I think if Geno is a game manager with a running back like JEANTY, this is the way that it should look like. You go back and you look at the rush attempts to the pass attempts in this game. And I know it's different because they come out and they lead the game, obviously, so this goes a little more towards the script of what you like to see. But the Raiders have 32 rushing attempts to 23 pass attempts. For you guys at home, Raider Nation, I mean, JEANTY finishes with a career high of 23 carries, 75 yards, and a touchdown. I think you guys would take that every day and 10 times on Sunday if they just kind of make it a little bit easier on Geno, let ASHTON run. Even if they weren't necessarily running the ball as efficiently, you know, they're still attacking it and making the defense respect the run. And then, again, you dink and dunk, get the ball to your guys in space, and let them do the heavy lifting instead of really pushing the ball down the field. Again, like I said, they were being efficient. Geno goes for 74% completion percentage on the day. That is who he has been over the course of his career. Obviously, that hasn't been the case through the first 5 weeks of the season. He's really struggled in that regard. But today, he reverted back to that in terms of being a very efficient passer. I know everybody's going to talk about the pick because it's his 10th on the year and all this stuff, leading the league. And also the fact that no Raiders quarterback has done that since 1983 in terms of 10 picks in their first 6 games. That's obviously pretty brutal. But you take that one out of it. That's one of those ones. Okay, let's just talk about that actually real quick since we did bring it up. I didn't want to harp on the negative stuff because it's a win. But since we're talking about the pick, let's just dive into it on that one. There's pressure by Simmons. We'll get to him. He was a wrecking ball in this game. He was one of the guys we said the Raiders had to slow down. They didn't do a great job of doing that, but he gets the pressure, forces Geno off of his spot there. It's first down, and Geno just rushes it, throws it into coverage. You can't do that. Eat that one. Live to play another day. Just be smarter than that. Geno said after he needs to jump in the ocean or take some sort of crazy bath to wipe the funk off of him because he is a bit snake-bitten. In terms of the turnovers, will also just make better decisions. He did that most of the time today. Obviously, in that throw, it wasn't. You can't do that, especially, again, like I said, on first down or when you're on the edge of the red zone. I believe they're at the 24 at that time. Just eat that one. Live to play another day. Keep the drive alive. Keep going. He knows that at some point he's going to stop doing that. But again, overall, you have to like what you did see out of Geno in this one. And like I said, they do not really push the ball down the field a ton. His first pass of 10-plus air yards actually didn't come until the fourth quarter of this game. So again, that's something where they tried to keep everything in front of the safeties because they were sitting back in a lot of too high, a lot of cover 3 and quarters looks. So just dink and dunk and let your playmakers do their thing. And that's what I've been saying for quite a while. I think on the first handful of drives you saw, it was very clear. On the early downs in particular, the Raiders wanted to attack the edges, get the ball to their guys in space, and then get north and south in the running game, and let ASHTON JEANTY see the field and do what he does. And that was working for them. They put together a long 13-play drive. Obviously, the sack that Geno took ends the drive. They settle for the field goal. But overall, like, you could see the recipe for success for this offense and what was going to lead them to victory in this game. And I thought they did a really good job of sticking with it. As much crap as we've given Chip Kelly over the course of the last couple weeks for abandoning the run and all those things, got to give him kudos for sticking with it and continuing to kind of let that game plan play out. And again, take what the defense was giving him. Geno did that as well today too. But the interesting thing in this one, like I said, in terms of not pushing it down the field, as we look at some of the stats here, Geno averaged 2.9 air yards per pass in this game. That's the second lowest mark by any quarterback this season. Before this, in the previous 5 games of the season, he averaged 8 air yards per pass attempt. So obviously a massive difference, a difference of about 5 air yards per pass. And I think that's huge. Like I said, get the ball to your guys in space. Let them do the work. Let them do the heavy lifting. don't try and push it or take it when it's not necessarily there for the offense. So I thought that was a really efficient approach to things for them in terms of being able to keep moving the sticks, and again, let the guys get to work. Michael Mayer was one of those guys that really stood out to me in this game. He comes back after being out for a couple weeks dealing with that concussion. Massive for them. It's so crazy to see what this offense looks like when they have a reliable tight end in there and when they get him involved in the game. Mayer goes for 5 catches, 50 yards, and a touchdown. He's more than just a blocker. I think people forget how much he was used when he was in college and how many different looks you can get with that guy. Like, he's a big body, so it's easy to confuse the fact that, like, oh, he must just be an inline blocking tight end. Even Ian Thomas as well. Those are 2 big dudes. But they can get out and move. And I talked to Mike about that after the game, and he said, he's like, that's something that can wreak havoc on defenses. Excuse me here, guys. Mouth's a little dry after this one. But look, it's one of those things where when you get both of those guys involved, it gives the defense a lot to think about because you don't necessarily know. There used to be a time back in the day where it's like you trot those bigger body tight ends out there and it's like, oh, it's a run. And Mike alluded to that. Well, now with these guys and a lot of these modern day tight ends, you can do so many things off of them. And I thought Mike did really well in the running game, blocking wise today. Ian Thomas still, some work and meat left on the bone in that area. But the fact that they can do those things opens things up for the offense. Look at the way that Mike was able to attack the defense's middle of the field there. That's huge too, just to be able to get them to really have to concentrate on the middle portion of the field, because that does, again, allow you to attack the edges, which we saw them do it multiple times today. So just a total game changer for them having a tight end that can get involved, in a dynamic tight end like Michael Mayer. Obviously, this is my opinion. I'm not reporting anything here. I do think that we don't see Brock until after the bye week, and I think that's totally fine. You need to give that guy time to get back. Obviously, when he's healthy, him and Michael Mayer, the two of them, provide this offense with a really dynamic attack in the tight end room and present a lot of really tough looks to defenses. So take the time to get Brock back, and let's let Michael Mayer really get into a rhythm and show what he can do and give defenses stuff to think about before you bring in your true number one receiving threat in Brock Bowers. So, like I said, getting Michael Mayer involved, that was something I really wanted to see them do early on. They did it on the first drive. He balls out, has one heck of a day. He's feeling good about himself, both in the passing game and the running game. I go back to one of the runs that, I think it was the run that Trey had. Michael Mayer's down the field, doing a great job blocking down the field to open things up for Trey on that big catch and run, too. So, kudos to him. He's one of those dudes I'd give a game ball to in this game. And Gino even said it afterwards, talking about a guy like Michael Mayer, having those tight ends in there. He said it's kind of like a safety net for him, those guys that he can trust. So just huge for Gino's confidence even, having a guy like that back in the fold. Also, one thing that's really interesting, we talked about needing to see more out of Jack BECH and this offense. Well, we saw that today. Jack BECH gets 42 snaps to just 2 snaps for Dante Thornton. I really like the way that they're using Jack BECH. A lot of times they'll stack him and Jacoby together or him and another receiver, but they've got Jack on the line. He's such a big, strong, powerful receiver. You stack him on the line, make the defenses collision him. Again, obviously today they were bailing a lot, making, leaving the Raiders in front of them. But a lot of times, teams will come up and collision those guys. I think when you play a guy like Jack BECH on the line in that kind of stacked look, that's a game changer. That's where his physical style of play can, really thrive and open things up for a guy like Jacoby or a guy like Trey. So I like that they're getting their second-round pick involved a lot more. It's about time. Now you really need to get him involved in terms of the catches and stuff like that, because let me go back to the stats here and see what he actually finished with, because I don't remember any catches of note from him. Yeah, he had no catches. He was targeted one time. But again, just the simple fact that they're getting him the snaps, that's massive. With Dante Thornton, obviously we saw him a lot, beating the defense in deep cover or deep situations throughout training camp. Obviously, they're trying to work on that deep connection a lot, early on in the preseason. And as the preseason went on, that just hasn't quite happened. He hasn't quite developed. So now give him more time to work on those things. Maybe you throw him in there just in terms of packages, make the defense really think about it after the offense has been clicking. But again, I think today they realized, hey, the defense is sitting back. Like I said, they're playing a lot of those cover 3 looks, the quarters looks, the 2 high looks, sitting back in that shell, keeping everything in front of them. That's not Dante's game. So let a guy like Jack BECH, let a guy like Jacoby, let a guy like Trey really rack up the snaps and get those things going. So, again, as much crap as a lot of guys like to give, the coaching staff, give them kudos for realizing, hey, that's not working. Let's sit them down. Let's get a guy in BECH out there who can do a lot more. and who can bring the physicality, not only blocking-wise in the running game, but also just physicality as a receiver when they do start to get him involved a little bit more in that area of the game. And look, we really haven't talked much about ASHTON JEANTY. I guess we kind of talked about the running game early on in this one. But again, ASHTON goes 23 carries, 75 yards, and 1 touchdown. We talk about this so much on the podcast. Look at how much of a game changer it is when you get ASHTON JEANTY some room to run in space. And when you go and look at the stats, he really didn't have a ton of room. At least according to Pro Football Focus, when I looked real quick before we started shooting the podcast, he had 0.1 yards before contact. So again, another bad performance in that area for the offensive line in terms of giving him room to run. But I think that's just more in terms of the tackles for a loss. That kind of skews the numbers a bit more in terms of the other guys. Because look here, let me go back to the stats here and look at it. Like, Geno finishes with -3 rushing yards. Raheem Mostert finishes with -4. They go for 68 total on the day. So obviously that's going to skew some of the numbers, I think, before contact there a bit. But when ASHTON had some room to run, when he's able to, sit back, see the field, make those cuts, that's obviously a game changer for him, and that's when you really see him get him going. So let's see more of these 20-plus carry games for ASHTON JEANTY as the year goes on. Again, the offensive line needs to be better overall, protection-wise, and in the running game too. But got to like the way that they stuck with ASHTON and the fact that they did get him going. Those ASHTON JEANTY anytime touchdowns always seem to be a hit. That was something Matt has continued to push home in our Raiders Rounders reports, so he hits on that. Also talked about Geno anytime interception. That seems to be like a lock each and every week until he eventually cleans it up. But again, that's one of those ones where I think, you move on from that because they end up winning the game, but still a bad decision there by him. And also, too, the Raiders win. Matt said he thought they could win by double digits. They get that done. They also cover in this one. It was really interesting. The Titans had a chance for a little backdoor cover at the end of there, and there would have been a real bad beat for a lot of folks involved. So hopefully you guys listen to Matt. He's been really good on the podcast throughout the year as things have gone on. But overall, again, and I know I say overall a lot, but overall, you got to like what you saw from the Raiders. I know it wasn't the prettiest thing in the world, and a lot of people are saying this was the most underwhelming, dominant performance they've seen. And I think that's a really funny and good way to put it because, look, that's kind of what it was. But this is a bad Titans team. This is how it should have looked for them. Or no, it should have looked more dominant. Let's be completely real. But you should be able to run the ball against this team. They were able to do that, not at a crazy clip, but they stuck with it. And then, again, they were efficient on offense. And I think, again, this is the recipe for the Raiders. Should be the recipe for them going forward as the season rolls on. One of the things we did say is you need to be able to contain, Simmons, Jeffrey Simmons. They weren't able to do that for the most part. He had 6 tackles, 1 sack, 2 tackles for a loss, 2 quarterback hits. Again, he gets home on Geno as well on that pick there to help force it. Too many times we've seen this offensive line struggling with stunts and stuff like that. They need to get it sorted out. A lot of times to me, and I'm no offensive line expert, but it looks like Jackson is passing him off correctly. And Jordan Meredith is leaving to go find other work a little too quickly and not tracking guys. That at least is what I think is happening. Don't go after there and attack these guys because of that. That's my take on what's happening. I think they need to communicate a little bit better, and Jordan maybe needs to be a little better at picking some of those things up. I'd love some people that are actually savants in the offensive line blocking scheme world to help me out on that in the comments if you guys do know. But that's kind of my read of how things are going there. Stone Forsythe had a couple plays here and there that weren't too hot, but overall, I think, look, filling in for Colton Miller, you have to like what you've seen from him. We do need to see more from DJ Glaze on the opposite side there. He's shown some issues here and there, and on the one, if I remember right, the one that we thought was a fumble, and then, the defense picks it up, takes it back to the house, and ends up being reviewed, and they say it was an incomplete pass. I believe that was DJ. Or no, it wasn't DJ. That was one on a stunt to get home, but DJ still didn't hold up too well on the edge there. So I don't want to pass blame up against people that shouldn't be. But, yeah, that wasn't DJ in that case. But, again, overall, the offensive line still got to get better against what's not a great Titans team, but, again, really good front in the sense of Simmons being one of the best 3 techniques in the league. You'd like to see them be able to bottle him up a bit more. That obviously wasn't the case for the Raiders today. But building blocks for sure. Because at the end of the day, you want to see them be able to get a win, and they do. And so that's massive for this team because we're not sitting up here talking about how atrocious they look. Instead, we're saying, hey, these are building blocks, and this is a recipe that you can point to for success. So many times over the years, how many times have we heard the coaches for the Raiders, whether it's dating back to Gruden, even Josh McDaniels, all of them, they talk about wanting to run the football and then play off of that. Well, today they stuck to the run. Again, 32 carries on the day. And ASHTON, you want your number 6 overall pick to have 20-plus carries on the day. They did that. So continue to stick to that and just build off of that and let Geno Smith be the efficient game manager that he is. That, I think, is what we need to see more out of Geno in this offense. And we know we talked so much about his deep passing efficiency numbers, prior to the season starting. And like I said, his numbers in that category prior to this year, that's the key, had been elite in the deep passing game. That hasn't quite worked out for him just yet. So why not give him the time to get comfortable, taking the underneath stuff, and attacking the defense that way? Like I said, when they get Brock back, it's going to be a game changer for them. And that trickle-down effect will spread to the rest of the guys in the receiving core after they have all had a couple weeks to really get going. But overall, back to Stone Forsythe, impressed with what I've seen from him, filling in for Colton Miller, because I know a lot of us probably thought it was going to get real ugly for him on the edge there. There was one time, too, on one of the tosses to Ashton that he did a great job kind of peeling back and, walling off for Ashton to get a little more room. On Ashton's rushing touchdown, too, you got to give a shout-out to Dylan Parham, working his way up, walling off the D-tackle, I believe it was. And then Jordan Meredith did a really good job on Simmons. Simmons jumps into one of the gaps there, and he's able to wall him off, too, to be able to open. It was a really big hole for Ashton. Good eyes by him there. Stick with me, too, here, guys, is for the folks that are watching at home as I kind of work my way down, through some of the keys or some of my notes from the game here when I was up in the press box watching it. Again, the run-pass ratio, yeah, that was really good. Like I said, they didn't attempt a pass of 10-plus air yards until early in the fourth quarter. That, to me, is a crazy stat, again, when you realize what type of player Geno is and the fact that he does want to push the ball down the field. Back to JEANTY with the fact that he had 6 carries for 31 yards, 5.2 yards per carry in the first quarter. I think that's what every first quarter should look like for the Raiders moving in there. And like I said, the offensive line for the Raiders started kind of falling apart after that third drive. That's where things were kind of like, oh, man, you're like, buckle up here. And that ended up being the case, really, as the game kind of wore on there. Also impressive from the defense, like we said. Total on the day there, they held the Titans to 81 net yards in the first half. That's the lowest the Raiders defense has allowed in the first half since 2019. So solid for them in that regard. We talked about the third downs as well. Special teams, yeah, you got to give a shout out to Bachman. I mean, today, look, special teams was not an issue for them. It had been for so many weeks through the first 5-6 weeks of the season here. Bachman has a couple of nice returns. He had one of 18 and 25 yards. And then Dylan Laube as well, flashing again on special teams. You need to continue to see that from this group. Special teams have been so solid for them for so many years. Nice to see them get back to that. Also A.J. Cole, look, we talk about specialists all the time. Some people say they're not real football players, all this stuff. You got to have a lot of respect for A.J. Cole. Obviously, this franchise has a lot of respect for the specialists. There have been some great ones in there. I don't subscribe to the fact that they're not real football players. Those guys can sway a game. A.J. Cole, with the ankle issue after the block punt in the previous week, comes out, punts really well. So you got to like what you saw out of him, too. So, again, guys, overall, solid day at the office for the Raiders. You can't control who you play, but they came away with a win. The saying is, just win, baby. You cannot punt on the season just yet. I know a lot of people, leave in the comments when I asked on Twitter, how you're feeling, how you kind of wrap your head around this one. Folks were saying like, oh, that's going to hurt us draft pick-wise, all this stuff. You can't be thinking about that right now. This is a building year. You need to see the record look like something better than it did last season. And I know draft position, all that stuff. We're not going to talk about that. Like, it's freaking October. We're not talking about draft stuff now. Like, let these guys do their best out on the field and see what that looks like record-wise, see how they can build off of it, and give you guys something hopefully to look forward to, as the future, and say, hey, look, they're building, they're growing under this staff. And today was a step in the right direction, albeit against a really bad Titans team. I am glad that we're not sitting up here talking about this team looking horrible against the bad Titans team. So, again, take the wins where they can come along. Next up for the Raiders, obviously, they go to Kansas City to take on the Chiefs. Much better be doing that after a game like this against the Titans, where you can point to some things to look for. Obviously, heading to KC, who knows what's going to happen? You never really know what Raiders team is going to show up, against Kansas City. But they usually show up pretty well on the road in KC. It's a rivalry game. The Chiefs obviously aren't the same Chiefs that we've seen in recent years. They're going to be taking on the Lions tonight. Obviously, as I'm recording this, they are playing. So I don't know what ends up happening in that game for them, but that's going to be a big game, a big week coming up for the Raiders against the Chiefs. And like I said, they always seem to play very well. Defensively, they've done some really good things on the road in Kansas City. We'll see if they can repeat that fact again, against a Chiefs team that overall is struggling more than they have in recent years. And the simple fact, too, that Travis Kelce doesn't look like the same guy. So we'll see how the Raiders come out in that game. But I think we need to see another game of Patrick Graham with a real aggressive approach on defense. We all know when you get to Patrick Mahomes, when you're able to get home on the blitz, any quarterback, really. I hate when people say that. It's like, oh, yeah, well, if you get home on the blitz, like, duh, no quarterback's going to have success in that area of the game. But keep that pressure, keep that aggressive approach against Patrick Mahomes. I think you can live and die by that. And I know the corner play isn't the best as what you'd like to see from them, but you got to be able to get home quick. Otherwise, that soft zone is going to get eaten up by those guys. So keep mixing up those looks. Keep guys confused. If they can do that to Mahomes next week in Kansas City, that's going to be great for them. And again, continue to play this conservative approach on offense and only take those deep shots after you've really established the run and all that stuff. They did kind of abandon the play-action passing game. We didn't see it as much as we had in recent weeks. Maybe that's just because they did run the ball so many more times. Again, 32 carries in the running game on the year or on the day. So we'll see how that transpires next week. But again, obviously big for Michael Mayer to get back involved again. You can tell how excited he was to be playing. So I'm curious to see what he looks like in Kansas City next week and just keep feeding ASHTON JEANTY. We know what that Chiefs defense can do. If you can get him out of sorts by running the ball, and again, make it easy on Geno, let him attack the edges, take the over the middle stuff to his safety blankets and the tight ends. That's going to be massive for him, where you can really get those drives going and just keep the ball out of Patrick Mahomes' hands. Now, that's enough of looking ahead, because obviously today is about a win, something we haven't been able to talk about in quite some time. But tell me, guys, in the comments, how you felt about this one, how you wrap your head around it. Are you stoked? What's your biggest takeaway? I know it wasn't the sexiest win in the world, and offensively, there's plenty left to be desired. But again, you still get the win. They took what the defense gave them, and it was still overall an efficient game, aside from the one pick by Geno there. We'll see if he can play a clean game in Kansas City overall. And again, too, guys, as I always say, please do make sure you check us out online at silverandblacksportsnetwork.com and subscribe to our free newsletter. Those things drop on Mondays and Fridays. In our Monday edition, we're going to be diving deeper into the stats, handing out some game balls of some of the key players as well, and tell you guys really who paved the way for the win for the Raiders. That one's going to be dropping on Monday morning at 6 a.m. in your inbox. Again, you can go check that out and subscribe for free at silverandblacksportsnetwork.com. Thank you guys, as always, for tuning in. It is much better to be talking about a win instead of a horrendous loss. It's much more fun breaking these ones down. I don't have a dog in the fight, I'll be honest, but it makes my job more fun when the Raiders win. So it's just good to be able to talk about a win, because losing sucks for everybody involved. So again, guys, thank you guys for tuning in, for commenting, subscribing, all that stuff. It's been awesome. We'll be seeing you again. Also, a programming note, I am going to be out of town most of the week this coming week. I have another project that's taking me out to Chicago. I'll reveal more of that maybe in later episodes, of the show. So I won't actually be here in Las Vegas, but I still will be covering things remotely. We're going to try and bring some fun guests on the podcast for you, previewing that game there against the Chiefs. And then I'll be back here in Vegas covering the game, from Vegas against the Chiefs there. And so I'll have the postgame podcast for you next week. But as I said, too, I will still be covering our normal cadence of podcasts while I'm on the road. We'll have those podcasts dropping on Wednesday and Friday mornings at 9 a.m. Pacific. So do make sure you keep it tapped in to Silver and Black Sports Network, because we got you guys covered. Again, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Hit us with those 5-star reviews in the comments down below, guys. And we will catch you in our Wednesday podcast as we turn the page to Kansas City. Take it easy, guys.